Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm really excited to have you here for the very first episode. This podcast is all about helping you improve your English in a natural and enjoyable way. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced learner, there's something here for you. Let's dive in.
Picture this. You are sitting in a coffee shop, just minding your own business. And then a tourist walks up and asks you a relatively simple question in English.
Oh man, I can already feel the anxiety building up.
Right, because in your head, you immediately form this beautiful, perfectly articulated answer. But then you open your mouth and suddenly you sound like a dial-up internet modem from 1998.
Just completely grinding gears, yeah.
Exactly. You're stuttering, you're freezing, the words are just trapped in your throat. It is that incredibly jarring gap between what you can understand when you listen and what you can actually produce when you speak.
It is a universally agonizing feeling. It really is. That moment where your brain just seems to, hit a brick wall, even though you know for a fact you have vocabulary stored somewhere in there.
Yeah, you can practically see the words in your mind.
Right, you see them, but your mouth just completely refuses to cooperate.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are figuring out why your brain is actively sabotaging you in that coffee shop and how you can actually use your own messy, everyday emotions to bypass that freezing instinct entirely.
Which is such a fascinating shift in perspective.
It really is. We are breaking down the story of utilizing your personal emotions as the ultimate shortcut to English fluency. Because clearly, whatever we are doing right now, like the flashcards, the grammar drills, it just isn't translating to real life.
No, it's not. Which means we need a fundamental shift in how we view language itself. We have been trained to treat English like a database of information, something to be memorized for a standardized test.
Like a math formula or something.
Exactly. But language isn't just static data. It is a highly coordinated physical and emotional skill that has to be trained, much like an athletic movement.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the sabotage part. To understand how to fix this, we really have to look at what is actively going wrong in our heads when that tourist approaches.
Right. The root of the problem.
Yeah, and the biggest culprit seems to be that constant, exhausting inner voice that tries to translate every single word. Why is my brain doing that to me? It feels like an unnecessary hurdle.
It definitely feels like a hurdle, but you have to realize that translating isn't actually a flaw. It's not a malfunction. It is a highly evolved survival strategy.
Wait, really? A survival strategy?
Yeah, think of your brain like a computer. Your native language is your main operating system. It is robust, it is incredibly fast, and, you have relied on it to survive your entire life.
That makes sense.
So when you start learning a new language, you are essentially installing a new, very weak, untested program.
Ah, I see. So when I'm put on the spot, my brain panics and just defaults to the OS it already knows will keep me safe.
Exactly. It doesn't trust the new software yet, so it forces everything through the old, reliable operating system. But doing that creates this incredible mental gymnastics routine.
It really does feel exhausting.
Let's break down the actual split-second process a learner goes through just to answer a basic question like, what did you do yesterday? First, you get the abstract idea of your answer. Then, you formulate that answer in your native language.
Right.
Next, you try to translate those specific words into English. After that, you run a frantic mental grammar check on the past tense verbs. Then, you worry about your pronunciation. And only after all of that do you finally force the words out.
And by the time I get all that out, the person who asked me the question has already walked away to find someone else.
Right. The conversation has completely moved on. You missed the window.
Yeah.
Whereas a fluent speaker's brain skips almost all of that processing. They just go idea, English, speech. It's a direct, unbroken route. That is why translating in your head leaves you feeling physically and mentally exhausted. Your brain is literally doing quadruple the computation for every single sentence.
Wow. It feels a bit like trying to join the NBA just by watching basketball on TV and reading the rule book.
That's a great way to put it.
You might know everything about the game intellectually, but if you've never actually physically dribbled a ball under pressure, you're going to completely freeze on the court. So does this mean all our passive studying, the endless vocabulary lists, the apps, are they actually building the wrong kind of brain?
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah. In a very physical sense, you are wiring the wrong connections.
Ouch.
I know. Think of your brain like a highly dense, overgrown forest. The first time you try to walk through it, you have to hack away at branches, you stumble, it's incredibly slow, there is no path.
Right, just bushwhacking.
Exactly. But if you walk that exact same route 1,000 times, your brain paves it. It becomes a wide, clear, frictionless highway. Your brain doesn't judge whether a habit is good or bad for your conversational skills. It just says, oh, you repeat this sequence a lot. Let me wrap those neurons in myelin and make this automatic.
So if I am always practicing with flashcards that have my native language on one side and English on the other, I am literally paving a translation road in my brain.
Oh.
I'm training myself to be a slow translator, not a fluent speaker.
Precisely. Every single time you practice going from your native language to English, you reinforce that translation middleman. If you want fluency, you have to practice going directly from the meaning, the raw feeling, the image, the idea, straight to the English word. You have to carve a completely new, direct neural pathway.
Okay, so if we need to blaze this shiny new direct path in the brain, how do we get our brain to actually care enough to pave it quickly? Because doing flashcards clearly isn't providing the biological motivation. How do we bypass that old operating system?
Well, this is where we tap into the ultimate biological motivator, your own emotions. It involves a daily practice called emotional narration.
Right, emotional narration. This is essentially a 5-minute daily exercise where you describe your actual real-time thoughts and feelings in simple English as they are happening to you. So instead of sitting at a desk studying a textbook dialogue about going to the post office, you're standing in your kitchen making your morning coffee and thinking, I'm exhausted, my room is freezing, I really don't want to go to work today.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is the actual neuroscience behind why this works so rapidly. Emotion acts as a biological glue for memory.
The biological glue.
Let's break this down. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala.
Wait, for those of us who skip biology class, the amygdala is basically the brain's internal alarm system, right?
That is a perfect way to describe it. It monitors your environment for things that are important to your survival. When you experience an emotion, whether it's fear, embarrassment, joy, or just annoyance, your amygdala pulls the fire alarm.
Okay.
It floods your brain with neurochemicals like cortisol or adrenaline. Those chemicals physically alter your synapses, telling your brain, do not forget this moment. It is critical for our survival.
So emotion is essentially the save as button for the brain.
Exactly. So let's compare two language learning scenarios. In scenario 1, you sit in a calm, quiet room and try to memorize the textbook word approximately.
Right.
Right. You write it down 10 times. There is no chemical release. Your brain just doesn't care. Now, in scenario 2, you are running late for a very important meeting. Your heart is racing. You're sweating. And you learn to say the phrase, I am so annoyed right now, or I am embarrassed. Which one will your brain retain?
Oh, definitely the embarrassing one. My brain will hold on to that moment until the day I die. It will literally remind me of it at 3 summer a.m. 10 years from now.
Because the chemical marker is there. Learners spend months agonizing over academic vocabulary like environmental or significant. But in their actual daily life, when they spill coffee on their shirt, they can't quickly express, I'm relieved or I'm frustrated.
Oh, yeah.
Emotional narration bridges that exact gap. It forces you to attach English directly to the chemical spikes happening in your body every day.
But let me push back on this because I can see a major roadblock here. Here's where it gets really interesting. What if my feelings are incredibly complex?
Complex how?
Like in my native language, I can express incredible nuance. But my English vocabulary is basically at a toddler level. So if I'm having a PhD-level existential crisis about my career, how do I narrate that with preschool English?
That is the exact trap that forces people back into translating. They try to take a highly complex native thought, something like, I feel deeply disappointed because my professional expectations were completely subverted, and they try to translate it word for word.
Yeah, and the brain just blue screens.
The brain gets overwhelmed and crashes. The secret here is that you have to simplify.
So I have to dumb down my own feeling.
Not dumb them down, distill them. Take that massive complex thought and break it into 3 very simple, very direct sentences. Instead of the long, poetic explanation, you think, I'm disappointed, the result was bad, I expected more.
Oh, wow. That actually communicates the exact same core emotion, but it completely removes the need for advanced grammar structures.
And, crucially, it sounds entirely natural. Fluent native speakers use incredibly simple structures to communicate complex feelings all day long.
That makes a lot of sense.
You have to stop treating English like it's a rigid academic subject you are being graded on and start treating it like a daily tool. Think about your smartphone. You don't sit down and study your phone's operating manual for an hour. You just use it to get things done.
Right, you just pick it up when you need it.
Exactly. By changing just 10% of your inner voice to English, just noticing the rain on your commute and thinking, it's raining again, I hate this weather, you are creating thousands of these tiny, emotionally charged repetitions every single day.
Which physically builds that direct neural pathway.
You've got it.
Okay, so I'm narrating my emotional life, I'm distilling my thoughts, and I'm building this new road. But to keep doing that, I need fresh materials. I need to feed my brain new English words and phrases to use in those thoughts, which brings up a huge issue.
Let me guess. Overwhelm.
Yes. Whenever I try to watch or listen to native English content to get those new words, I just hit a wall of pure exhaustion.
The dreaded overwhelm. It happens to almost everyone.
Right. And there is a concept to combat this called the 70% rule, which I think is going to relieve a massive amount of anxiety for anyone listening. Because the trap we all fall into is wanting to understand 100% of a podcast or a YouTube video.
It's a perfectionism thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you put it on, you hear a word you don't know, and you immediately pause it. You open a dictionary app, you look it up. 5 seconds later, another slang word, pause, look it up.
And 30 minutes later.
30 minutes later, you've watched exactly 2 minutes of a video, you have a headache, and you just quit.
It is an incredibly inefficient way to learn because it shatters your focus and completely ruins the natural rhythm and melody of the language. This is where the 70% rule comes in. When you choose material to listen to or watch, you should aim for content where you organically understand about 70% of what is being said without looking anything up.
But wait, won't I just learn incorrect English if I'm only guessing what the other 30% means? Isn't that just training myself to be comfortable with ignorance?
It's actually training your brain's natural pattern recognition engine. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about how children learn their first language. They don't pause their parents to look up words in a dictionary.
That's true.
They rely on environmental context, tone of voice, and body language to figure out what that missing 70% means. If a parent points to a hot stove and yells, "Don't touch that, it's searing," the child doesn't need to know the dictionary definition of searing to understand the message.
Right. They get the context from the pure panic in the voice.
Exactly. Your brain is a prediction machine. When you give it 70% of the puzzle pieces, it actively works to fill in the rest. That active guessing is what creates deep neuroplasticity.
It's basically a Goldilocks zone for the brain. Like, think about walking into a gym. If you go to the gym and lift a 1 kilogram weight every day, absolutely nothing is going to change.
Right. No stress, no growth.
But if you walk in on day one and try to bench press 200 kilograms, you're going to get crushed, embarrass yourself, and never go back. Yeah. You need a challenge that pushes your limits but doesn't crush you. And a lot of us are trying to lift the 200-kilogram weight by watching complex political thrillers or stand-up comedy in English when we're at a beginner level.
Yes.
Or we fall into what I call the Netflix trap.
Ah, yes.
The Netflix trap. You put on a hit English show, but you turn on the subtitles in your native language. Mm-hmm. And you pat yourself on the back telling yourself, hey, I'm studying. But I realized recently when I turn on subtitles, I literally stop hearing the audio entirely. I'm just reading.
You are practicing speed reading in your native language. You are completely ignoring the audio track. True fluency requires developing a high tolerance for uncertainty. Perfectionism is the enemy here.
That makes a lot of sense.
Even native speakers don't hear every single word in a noisy movie theater or at a crowded restaurant. They rely heavily on context to fill in the blanks. When you stop a video every 5 seconds to look up a word, you are training your brain to panic at the unknown, rather than training it to use context clues.
You have to trust your brain's ability to figure things out in the dark. So what does a healthy daily routine look like with this 70% rule in mind? How do we structure this so we don't burn out?
The ideal daily breakdown is about an hour, and it's highly manageable. You start with 20 minutes of passive listening at that 70% comprehension level.
No pausing.
No pausing. Just let the rhythm of the language wash over you and focus purely on following the main idea. Next, spend 15 minutes doing active repetition, picking out just a few useful phrases you heard and saying them out loud.
Okay, so 20 listening, 15 repeating.
Right. Following that, 15 minutes of speaking. This is where you do your emotional narration, talking to yourself about how your day is going. And finally, 10 minutes reviewing personal vocabulary. Words that are actually relevant to your specific life, not random lists of farm animals from a textbook.
20 listening, 15 repeating, 15 speaking, 10 reviewing. I love how actionable that is. But I really want to zoom in on that repeating and speaking part for a second. Because I can have the right input, and I can attach the emotion, but yesterday I tried to use a new phrase with the barista, and my tongue literally tied itself in a knot.
Oh, the physical fumble.
Yeah, knowing the phrase didn't stop my mouth from fumbling it completely.
Because, as we established earlier, speaking is a physical skill. English uses entirely different facial muscles, tongue placements, and breathing patterns than your native language. You have to physically condition your articulators, and the best tool for this is shadowing.
Right, shadowing. For those who haven't heard of it, shadowing is when you listen to native English audio and you repeat it out loud almost immediately, a split second, behind the speaker. You're acting like their shadow. But there is a huge trap here, isn't there?
There is. They mess this up all the time. Think of shadowing like a pianist practicing finger movements. The goal is to train the precise, real-time coordination between your ears, your brain, and the muscles in your mouth.
Okay.
The trap occurs when learners violate the 70% rule and choose audio that is way too fast. They try to keep up with a fast-talking news anchor, they stumble over all the syllables, and they brush it off thinking, well, practice makes perfect. But practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent.
Oh, wow. That is a chilling thought.
If you repeat a mispronounced word or a broken rhythm 1,000 times as fast as you can just to keep up, you are permanently wiring that physical mistake into your neural pathways. You are literally training yourself to speak poorly.
Okay, so we have to slow down. We can't just sprint out of the gate. How do we shadow correctly?
There are 3 distinct stages you must follow. Stage 1 is listen first. Just listen. Do not speak. Internalize the melody and the rhythm.
Got it.
Stage 2 is slow shadowing. You pause the audio, you repeat it sentence by sentence, focusing entirely on accuracy and mouth placement. And only then do you move to stage 3, which is natural shadowing, where you try to match the speed and the emotion of the speaker.
And what really surprised me about this process from our sources is the emphasis on rhythm over individual sounds.
Rhythm is arguably more important for being understood than having a perfect accent. English is a heavily stress-timed language. The core meaning is carried on the beat of the sentence, not the individual vowels.
Yeah, a great example is a simple question. A learner might try to pronounce every single word clearly and separately, giving them all equal weight, like, what are you going to do?
Right, very robotic.
Exactly. But a native speaker blends all of that into a specific physical rhythm. What are you going to do? If you just study a textbook, you expect to hear the first version. Shadowing trains your mouth to physically produce and recognize the second version.
Exactly.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If I spent all my time just perfectly copying a movie actor's rhythm and intonation, aren't I just becoming a weird, highly trained copy machine? I don't want to sound like a clone of someone else.
That is exactly the point. And that brings us to the ultimate step of this entire methodology. The final and most frequently missed step of shadowing is personalization.
Personalization.
You cannot just be a parrot. Once you have trained your mouth to produce a sentence structure fluidly, you must immediately manipulate it to fit your actual life. You take the sentence you just shadowed, let's say the actor in the video said, "I've been working on my English for 3 years," and you instantly change the variables to make it true for you. You say out loud, "I've been living in New Zealand for 1 year," or "I've been a software engineer since 2020.
Ah, I see. You're taking the mechanical framework, the rhythm you just practiced, and you're injecting your own personal truth into it.
Precisely. You have to connect it back to your own identity. You have to make the language your own to truly acquire it. That is the moment it moves from being a repetition exercise to becoming your actual voice.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the whole picture, the ultimate formula for you listening right now comes down to a 3-step loop.
Let's hear it.
First, input. You consume content using the 70% rule, challenging your brain to guess the context without crushing yourself. Second, connection. You use emotional narration to tie those new words to your real, messy daily feelings, the annoyance, the joy, the exhaustion, so your amygdala flags them as important and locks them in.
Beautiful.
And third, output. You use personalized shadowing to physically train your mouth muscles, and then instantly adapt those sentences to tell your own story.
It is a complete self-sustaining loop.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening who feels like they are permanently stuck or who worries that they started learning too late in life, I want to emphasize something very important.
What's that?
Do not measure your progress by how many obscure textbook words you can recognize on a multiple-choice test. Measure your progress by how easily you can express your daily emotions. Your brain possesses incredible neuroplasticity. It is constantly forming new connections, regardless of your age. You are never too old to build a new pathway, and you are never permanently stuck. It is simply a matter of what you choose to train every single day.
And that brings us right back to that coffee shop. If you start training this way, narrating your coffee order in your head as you stand in line, shadowing the rhythm of a podcast on your commute, and physically connecting the language to how you actually feel when that tourist asks you a question, the dial-up modem disappears.
It really does.
The gap between your brilliant idea and your physical mouth completely closes.
Because you aren't desperately retrieving a file from a dusty translated archive anymore. You are simply speaking your mind.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. We've established today that your brain is a highly efficient machine that literally rewires itself to become faster at whatever inner monologue you repeat most often. It physically paves a road for whatever you think about.
It does.
So if you apply this beyond just learning English, what is the daily voice inside your head actually training you to become, not just in language, but in your everyday life?
That is a deep question.
We'll leave you to think on that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.